Hey there folks, welcome back to another episode of Marvelous Videos, where we're going to take a nostalgic journey into one of the most popular animated superhero sagas ever created, Justice League, as well as its epic sequel, Justice League Unlimited. Released in the early 2000s, this series united the most famous DC characters and made stories that were ambitious, emotionally intense, and more mature than you might expect. It ultimately became something more than mere action, and eventually, it became the standard in superhero storytelling. Since its theatrical debut up to its intensifying climax and aftermath, we're here to explore its riddling conclusion. So, get ready as we dive into the history of DC animation. Before we get into this explanation, though, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The creation and success of the Justice League animated series. The Justice League animated series premiered on November 17, 2001. It aired on Cartoon Network and was developed by Bruce Timm, who had already played a major role in shaping the DC animated universe through Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series. With Justice League, the team at Warner Bros. Animation wanted to bring DC's biggest heroes together in a shared continuity that had already proven its worth. The lineup featured Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Wally West, Green Lantern, Jon Stewart, Hawkgirl, and Martian Manhunter. This mix of characters was considered to balance powers, personalities, and backgrounds, allowing the team to function as more than just a group of strong individuals. The decision to cast Jon Stewart as Green Lantern instead of the more commonly known Hal Jordan was well calculated and acceptably popular, bringing diversity and a realistic military perspective to the team. The program had a widescreen format and aired in serialized story arcs, predominantly two-parters, for the first 2 seasons. This enabled more detailed storytelling than standard Saturday morning cartoons. The pilot, Secret Origins, introduced how the League came into existence as the Earth battles off an invading alien force. Throughout the initial season, the show explored stories based on comic mythology while also incorporating elements suitable for animation. Episodes like Injustice for All and Paradise Lost helped establish relationships among the characters, while The Savage Time offered a time travel story arc involving an alternate World War II. Throughout its initial run, Justice League blended comic book mythology with storytelling choices tailored for animation. It was unafraid to explore heavy themes while maintaining a sense of hope and heroism. Episodes like Injustice for All featured a terminally ill Lex Luthor assembling a team of supervillains, exploring the dynamics of evil mirroring the League's unity, as well as a desperate Luthor. Paradise Lost took Wonder Woman back to Themyscira, integrating mythology with contemporary conflict. The Savage Time, the standout finale for Season 1, used time travel to pit the League against a dystopian version of World War II history, reinforcing the show's commitment to morally nuanced storytelling. In Season 2, the relationship between the characters grew stronger. The show ventured into darker territory with storylines such as A Better World, where the League encounters a totalitarian version of itself. The consequences of unchecked power, government mistrust, and moral ambiguity were explored through the lens of superheroes. Hawkgirl's betrayal in the 2-part finale, Star-Crossed, was a turning point for the series. Her betrayal of the team was a consequence of her hidden loyalty to the Thanagarian Empire. It broke the team's trust and challenged their loyalty to one another. The emotional gravity of her choices and the consequences that followed provided the show with an emotionally satisfying conclusion that didn't feel forced. It also revealed how much the audience had come to care about individual characters beyond their powers or costumes. Another strength of the series was its consistent voice actors. Kevin Conroy returned as Batman, bringing a calm and assertive presence. George Newbern portrayed Superman in a relaxed and serious tone. Wonder Woman, voiced by Susan Eisenberg, ended up being the official voice of the character. Michael Rosenbaum provided depth and comic relief as The Flash, and Phil Lamar portrayed Jon Stewart as stoic but with an empathetic nature. These performances made the heroes more humane, and there was a high level of continuity throughout the DC animated universe. The Joker only popped up a handful of times, but you know he was voiced by Mark Hamill every time he did. The stylistic visual look of the show followed the stylized look of previous titles from the DCAU. It had expressive, dynamic, and iconic imagery in its animation, much like Batman the Animated Series. Action scenes highlighted teamwork, character synergy, and emotional stakes. The musical score, composed by Lolita Ritmanis, Christopher Carter, and Michael McQuiston, provided a cinematic backdrop that elevated dramatic moments without overwhelming the storytelling. Evolution into Justice League Unlimited. After finishing 2 strong seasons of Justice League, the creative team expanded their vision. In 2004, the series evolved into Justice League Unlimited, continuing the DC animated universe while expanding its scope to a much broader one. The original core team of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Martian Manhunter, all of whom remained present, were part of a much larger new league. But Justice League Unlimited also introduced dozens of new heroes into the mix. Green Arrow, Supergirl, The Question, Captain Atom, Black Canary, Huntress, My Boy Booster Gold, and many others were added to the story. These weren't just background characters or cameos. The writing team actively utilized these characters to explore new narratives, take creative risks, and experiment with different tones. C and D-list characters that weren't known by casual fans suddenly became central to the narrative. Unlike the earlier 2-part structure of Justice League, JLU primarily used single-episode stories because the format had changed, although many of these stories contributed to longer arcs running in the background. This new format allowed the series to experiment with mixing things up more often, serious political thrillers one week and comedic side missions the next. This shift opened creative doors, but it still sustained the continuity and maturity of its previous legacy. One of JLU's most important achievements was the Cadmus arc. This storyline ran across the first season of the new format and became one of the most acclaimed narratives in superhero animation. The show turned inwards rather than focusing on cosmic threats. Cadmus, a secret government project, viewed the League as a potential danger to humanity. With Superman's increasing power and the team's orbital watchtower, the fear of a dictatorship from above started to feel realistic, especially after the episode A Better World, where the Justice Lords just about took over this universe. Lex Luthor was still a villain, but his involvement added more complexity, and his manipulation of Cadmus blurred moral and ethical lines. Amanda Waller, who was introduced as the project's leader, was neither good nor bad. She was operating under the belief that humanity should never be fully reliant on superpowered beings. Batman's clashes with Waller became key dramatic elements, especially in episodes like Ultimatum, Question Authority, and Panic in the Sky. They keep trying to one-up each other, and it's seriously amazing. The second season of JLU had a different story, which featured a new major arc that involved Lex Luthor's attempt to merge with Brainiac. This culminated in Divided We Fall, where the League confronts a godlike fusion of their 2 greatest threats. We see action and emotional payoff both in the season finale, while continuing to explore long-running tension, particularly with Superman's inner conflict about responsibility and power. The final season returned to more episodic storytelling, but still retained a sense of closure. In Destroyer, Darkseid launches a full-scale invasion of Earth, which forces the heroes and villains to work as a team. The episode closed with the League descending from the Watchtower into battle. The ending was open-ended, but it was a satisfying finale to the series. From a production standpoint, Justice League Unlimited maintained the visual style of the earlier DCAU shows, but incorporated sharper animation and more stylized designs for new characters. The voice cast continued to anchor the series. Kevin Conroy's Batman, George Newbern's Superman, Susan Eisenberg's Wonder Woman, and Michael Rosenbaum's Flash all carried over, but it also gave space to new voices such as Jeffrey Combs as The Question and Kin Shriner as Green Arrow, who also quickly became fan favorites. Justice League Unlimited ended in 2006, but the creators felt they had told the story they wanted to tell. It concluded the DCAU's primary timeline that began in 1992 with Batman, the animated series, which meant that it was a 14-year run across multiple shows. Even now, JLU is widely recognized as a high point in animated superhero storytelling. It has the combination of serialized arcs, emotional depth, and bold political themes that helped it stand apart. It redefined what superhero TV could be. Why did Justice League and Justice League Unlimited end? The DC animated universe had been running for almost 15 years when JLU wrapped up in 2006. Starting with Batman the Animated Series in '92, the creators had built a constantly evolving world that spanned multiple shows and characters. The end of JLU was the result of several overlapping reasons, which were creative, logistical, and strategic. From a creative perspective, the team behind the show felt they had told the stories they set out to tell. According to Bruce Timm, James Tucker, and Dwayne McDuffie, it was more appropriate to bring the show to a closure with a narrative rather than prolong it and lose the effect the show had on viewers. Key character arcs had reached resolution. The original League's formation, their internal conflicts, and their eventual expansion into a global force were all explored across 5 seasons from Justice League to Unlimited. The final episode, Destroyer, gave the show a conclusive finale without tying up every loose end. Darkseid returned, triggering a final battle that united heroes and villains. Superman released the full extent of his power, Batman made strategic sacrifices, Lex Luthor played a critical role in ending the fight. The episode ended with the League stepping off the Watchtower, descending into battle with momentum. The show ended because it had reached its natural conclusion. There were also external factors beyond the creative decisions. Cartoon Network began focusing on more younger-skewing content and original comedy series as its programming strategy shifted in the mid-2000s. Action shows like JLU were expensive to produce and no longer aligned with their target lineup. The show also kept a devoted fan base, although ratings began to decline in later seasons, especially after episodes began to be serialized and targeted the older audience range. Another major factor was the so-called DC character embargo. As Warner Bros. Planned new live-action films and TV projects, certain characters were restricted from appearing in animated shows. As one example, Aquaman, Deadshot, and even Batgirl could only do so much because of conflicts with other media. This complex story planning made it harder for the JLU team to explore certain arcs or develop long-term plots featuring certain characters. This censorship didn't exactly end the show single-handedly, but it limited future storytelling and was frustrating for the creators. The team still managed to work around those limitations despite all of it. They shifted focus to less mainstream characters like The Question, Huntress, and Captain Atom. These choices ended up being strengths. They gave the show a chance to bring in fresh ideas and show new favoritism to minor characters who rarely got the same screen time as Batman. But over time, the growing list of off-limits characters created enough obstacles to make continuing the series too difficult. Primarily, though, the creators didn't want the series to die out or get cancelled halfway through a story. Ending JLU on their terms allowed them to preserve the show's legacy. They tied up major themes, followed through with character arcs given to well-established characters, and gave fans a proper conclusion to the animated Justice League saga. Looking back, Justice League and JLU remain some of the most respected superhero series ever produced, which ended because the story was complete and because the team behind the scenes knew when to stop.
4 minutes, 50 seconds.
Attempts at revival and later spin-offs. Once Justice League Unlimited finished up in 2006, there was no immediate follow-up to the animated series or the DCAU storyline. Despite strong fan support and a lasting reputation, Warner Bros. And DC didn't get a sequel to the original. In the years that followed, several animated projects were released under the DC label, but none carried the same tone, continuity, or depth. One of the more prominent spin-offs was Justice League Action, which aired from 2016 to 18 on Cartoon Network. The series featured shorter 11-minute episodes, a lighter tone, and a more comedic style. It was aimed at a younger demographic, even while it brought back Kevin Conroy as Batman and maintained a wide lineup of characters, including Superman, Wonder Woman, as well as some lesser-known DC heroes. The series emphasized short, episodic stories as opposed to story arcs or serialization. Justice League Action received generally positive reviews, but didn't have big goals to match the plot structure of JLU with its lighthearted treatment and availability. During the 2010s, fans would continually demand the resurrection of the original DCAU. Social media trends and hashtags were used, such as #JLSequel and #RestoreTheDCAU. Interest was also shown by cast members, including Susan Eisenberg and Kevin Conroy. Bruce Timm and other producers acknowledged the demand but explained that studio support and corporate alignment were required to greenlit such a continuation. For years, no such project materialized. However, in 2021, DC Comics revisited the animated continuity in a different format, a comic book titled Justice League Infinity. Written by J.M. DeMatteis and James Tucker, both veterans of the animated series, this 7-issue miniseries picked up where JLU left off. It continued character arcs, reintroduced familiar faces, and expanded the universe into multiverse-level storytelling. In Justice League Infinity, the League deals with crises that extend beyond Earth, including dimensional shifts and alternate versions of themselves. Martian Manhunter returns after his departure in JLU, Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship is further explored, and characters like Overman are brought back into the story. The series maintained the voice and tone of the animated show thanks in large part to the involvement of the original creative team. It gave fans a legitimate continuation of the world they had followed for over a decade, even though it wasn't exactly an animated revival. Despite the comic success among fans of the original series, there still hasn't been an animated revival or official sequel on TV or film. Several animated DC projects have been produced in recent years, including Young Justice, the DC Animated Movie Universe, and Harley Quinn, but these operate in separate continuities and with different creative goals. The legacy of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited continues to influence newer shows, but the specific world built by Bruce Timm and his team hasn't returned to television. Animation trends have shifted, with studios now prioritizing shorter formats, broader comedy, and franchise reboots over long-form serialized storytelling. That's made it harder for complex, character-driven shows like JLU to re-emerge in the current programming environment. Still, the original shows remain widely available on streaming platforms, and their influence is seen in everything from DC's animated films to elements of the live-action universe. For many fans, Justice League Infinity helped provide a sense of closure, and while no new episodes have been produced, the demand for a return hasn't disappeared. Whether or not a proper continuation ever arrives, the story they told continues to resonate.
Could you stay with me? I'm scared.
The enduring legacy. Nearly 2 decades after its final episode aired, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited continue to stand as monumental achievements in superhero animation. These were not mere children's cartoons, but maturely anchored around related themes of ethics, identity, trauma, redemption, and the curse of power, portrayed in a common universe that took the lives and the minds of both the characters and the audience seriously. It widened what superhero television could be with its serial and empathetic narratives. The DCAU served as a blueprint for what could be done with DC properties, and this can be seen in most DC media, including the Arrowverse, the Young Justice universe, and even the film interpretation of the Justice League by Zack Snyder. The show is frequently cited by writers and animators as the gold standard for finding the right balance between action and humor while exploring subtle details of character, and for many fans, the show was foundational more than it was formative. Justice League respected the genre, the characters, and most of all, the audience. Its impact still echoes across comics, film, and television because it's a legacy of storytelling that proves capes and cowls can carry depth, complexity, and plenty of heart.
But a warrior relies on their heart and experience.
Marvelous verdict! And that brings us to the end of our video on 2001's Justice League, a series that redefined what animated storytelling could do. 7 heroes coming together to save the world turned into something much deeper, a show about trust, responsibility, and the cost of power. Across just 2 seasons, Justice League managed to leave a mark that still lingers today. It gave space for quieter character moments in between world-ending threats and never treated its audience like they couldn't handle nuance. Whether it was Wonder Woman discovering humanity, Batman pushing people away to protect them, or The Flash showing that kindness could be a superpower, the series let every character grow in their own way. And, in doing so, it created the grounds for what followed, from Justice League Unlimited up to the superhero shows of today. Its legacy is best found in the doors it opened up into smarter, deeper, and more emotional superhero storytelling. If you're a longtime fan, we hope this brought back some good memories, and if you're viewing it as a first-timer, you're in for a treat because you get to experience it with a fresh perspective, and large parts of it hold up extremely well. What episode left the biggest impression on you? For me, it's got to be that moment between Ace and Batman in Epilogue. That one always breaks me. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and thanks for spending time with us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and stay marvelous.